Hello, I'm Yaelle, and I'm here with my dad, Tim. We're covering part two of the topic of trauma, where we're going over the content of Dr. Vander Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. And so this episode is more on the tools and techniques and practices for healing and addressing some of the trauma and fear response. So last time we talked a lot about the physiology of and like what's happening in the brain under stress and under trauma. We talked about this kind of like a bottom-up approach versus top-down, and how important it is to first calm the alarm system or the limbic system. And so I don't know. Do you want to do a little review on that? I guess what is the difference between top-down and bottom-up?
Yeah, I think oftentimes when we think about trauma, we think that it's just all in our thinking, that if we can think better, we will get over it or we'll heal from it. And that's kind of the top-down approach. So we try to just describe what happened and see if we can have a better way to think about it. And I think that that's important, and it can be helpful to some extent. But I think there's a whole other level where these reactions are in our physiology or in the way the brain automatically reacts without even our conscious intention or our choosing. Right, so that's why I think we also need a bottom-up approach where the lower parts of the brain, the brainstem, the midbrain, even our nervous system, our body, even on a cellular level, all these aspects need to be calmed so that our intellect, our conscious, our upper or top brain can correspond or integrate. So I think that's the bottom-up approach. And I think that's what we experience a lot. Like when we are in a calmer state, we can think better. When we are in a physiologically restful or safe state, then our emotional response is a lot healthier. Right? So I think that's the bottom-up approach.
Yeah, I definitely think that I think intuitively the first thing people go to when they're trying to problem solve is this kind of top-down approach. Because say somebody is like maybe their behavior is perceived as acting out, or if they just can't get themselves together. A lot of times they're working against themselves too. They're trying to say if they're depressed, or say if they have anxiety or ADHD, things like that. Usually people, they're trying really hard, and it's hard to just address all of these things with willpower first. And it seems, I think more and more I'm coming to think that although it seems like behavior or feeling follows thought or what you tell yourself to do, I think it's almost the other way around. And I experienced this just like feeling depressed. When I was depressed, everything, I guess the whole lens through which I saw the world or interpreted the world, what I believed about the world, was filtered through this depressed lens. So it's like anything that would happen, it would just not be good. And I think that was almost like as a result, or more of a result of my physiology or what was happening. And so this is almost like, I guess, the same underlying thought of even pharmaceuticals, where it's described as a chemical imbalance, even though that might not really be that accurate. It's kind of the same idea that it's the physiology first, and that is kind of what I've experienced when, like, I'm the same person and I still have like the same values and beliefs about the world, but it really changes depending on how I am health-wise or mental health-wise. Just my entire experience of the world. So it's like no matter how much I tell myself that no, there's still hope and things like that. It's if I'm not right physiologically or in terms of my brain health, then the world is not going to feel like that for me. And that's really what I experienced when I like going through depression. And it seems like a similar case with people with bipolar, like friends I've had who have bipolar. It's like that contrast between being like those depressive episodes and then like in mania, it's like a whole different, they believe entirely different things about the world. And it seems that it's thought that follows the physiology rather than the other way around. And we feel like it's the other way around because I think it is because the thoughts are or what you tell yourself, what you can do with willpower. It's more intuitive to try to use that or try to address it through that. But I don't really know how well that it doesn't really seem to work that well.
Yeah, we think that we have control over our thoughts, maybe more so than in actuality. But
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we do have some choice, and we don't want to negate that, and that is still a very important part. But I think we are neglecting the impact of our physiology and the thoughts that these lower parts of our brain produce that sends up to our executive function, right? And so if we do not address that, I think we're kind of fighting ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and so today I think we're going to try to dive into many of these modalities that are more bottom-up in nature. Of course, we will, I think, still need to address medication, pharmaceuticals, because that's still a pretty important and integral part of how a lot of these things are addressed. And Dr. Vennekolt talked about it as well. And I think his take is that, well, when these things first came on to the scene, like SSRI, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, like Prozac and Zoloft and so forth. I think when they first came online, they did have some impact. That you see that there is a chemical process in our mind, in our brain, that is affecting how we feel. However, I think the important thing that he pointed out is that though these medications can be helpful in the short term, unless you address the underlying cause to these things, to the trauma or to the depressive state, we are not really solving anything, or we're not healing anything. We're just kind of putting a Band-Aid over something. And over time, you become not only dependent on it, but your natural physiological function also reduce, right? And so that's kind of maybe an important realization on how we can maybe use medication as a short-term aid so that we can address the deep-rooted, the underlying cause to these things, right? I know that you went through a long period of experiences with medication, so I don't know how you, thinking back, what's your take on what he expressed in terms of the effect of medication there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. I've heard medication described as like a almost like a safety blanket or like a Band-Aid solution kind of thing. And I think that is kind of accurate because, as you said, it isn't addressing the root cause necessarily. And I think that, I mean, there's still two sides to that, because if it's all you have, then by all means, do something. Yes, I don't think a good alternative is to do nothing. But I do think that medication is really, really limited. And it's almost like the standard. It's what most people have access to. So it's tough, but in my own experience, it didn't really work that well. My own experience was just getting on medication and then maybe feeling some of an effect. I never felt that much better. I don't really remember like ever feeling like I was back to 100% or like actually happy, or at least not for very long at all. I would just keep going through those cycles of like get on medication and then it's kind of better or it's manageable. It was always just manageable. And then I would crash again and feel terrible and then go back to like the psychiatrist and then increase the dosage and then that whole process again. It's manageable for a bit and then it stops working and then go back and then, just keep developing tolerance to that medication on higher dosages until I reach the maximum safe dosage. And then when it stops working, switch medications. And then I went through so many years of that. And yeah, it was pretty terrible. In the end, what really helped me was neurofeedback, which is one of the bottom-up approaches that we're going to be talking about. But yeah, my experience with medication wasn't good at all. And for some people it does work though. For some people, like SSRIs do help, and that's great. But for me, it really didn't work. And I guess just the existence of what people call or what's labeled, what's termed, what is it? Treatment-resistant depression. I think just the existence of that term it just shows that like we don't really have like perfect solutions. Medication and psychotherapy sometimes don't work for everyone, and so I think there really is just a need for more tools.
Yeah, I remember in the book you talked about how many of the veterans with PTSD, they in fact felt a positive benefit from these medications, but that it resulted in them refusing to deal with the trauma that they actually experienced. So they kind of just use it to numb themselves and kind of escape. Right. In some ways, we do that to ourselves all the time. We use alcohol, we use marijuana, whatever, or entertainment, Netflix. We use things. Yeah. So I think they end up basically using that, and because and I think I remember when you were on medication, your mental function reduced quite a bit because kind of just everything leveled out. Right. Everything is kind of lower, so you're not as reactive. But what we're seeing is a lot of people use that kind of as to kind of turn their brains off so they're not so reactive. But it's not really solving the underlying problem. For some of the clients I see, for example, they are on SSRI, but their problem is that they're not eating enough protein, so they're not getting enough tryptophan in their diets, and one of these amino acids that is required to produce the serotonin, the neurochemicals that is needed. So even if you have a reuptake inhibitor, which is supposed to leave more of the serotonin in the synaptic cliff, right? But if you don't produce enough to begin with, you don't have anything to leave out there and you nothing to inhibit the reuptake from, right? So people maybe they think that they can take this and then they don't need to change their diet and they don't need to eat healthy, and so it's in fact counterproductive. So I think if we can use this as a way to kind of get back to some level of functioning, so you can implement these other changes that is more bottom-up in nature, so that our physiology, our bodies start to heal. We start to address our maybe bad life habits or the hurts in the past, and learn forgiveness, practice gratitude, and things like that. And then it can be helpful. But But if we start to kind of depend on them to think that this is going to fix me, then I think that's problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we can dive into some of these modalities that actually I think can be very helpful, that if we integrate some of these into actual healing of the brain and our mind and our souls.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to dive into first?
So first, let me share my screen. We have EMDR. This is one of the things that he wrote about. Do you want to talk a little bit about this? What eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting, right? Because if you seen somebody going through this therapy, or you watch some explanations of this therapy, so the process looks like you kind of have to, I guess, begin by recalling a specific memory that causes these traumatic reactions, especially strong these underlying physiological emotional reaction. Let's say you think of a past abuse, or maybe a robbery or something like that. So when you think back, you still get that heart palpitation, the anxiety, or even this muscle tension. So basically, you are preparing your body for a fight or flight, right? So if you have a specific memory like that, and when you recall that memory, that's kind of the beginning of this process, and so you estimate what your level of reaction is from like a scale from 1 to 10 or something like that. You kind of recount how severe it is. And then the therapist would use a way to help your, especially with the eyes, to direct your eyes. So you're not moving your head is staying still, but there's something that moves in front of you so that your eyes are moving left to right, or sometimes to the corner, or sometimes to the bottom. So basically, your head's not moving, but your eyes are following this guy moving from left to right. Sometimes the left-right process is through sound as well. So you can have headphones, and there's sound in your ear going from left to right, left to right. So that process allows your mind, I guess in a way, it disrupts the memory or reprocess the memory, take it away from that automatic reactive mode that triggers all your physiological reactions into a memory where you can still recall what's happening, but disassociated with the physiological responses. Yeah, so that is done through the guiding your eye movement, the sound, sometimes just tapping left to right, and you can tap other parts of your body as well, maybe your knees or something like that. But it seems to be a way that engages your left and your right brain memory. Right and left brain's memory of that event in a way that kind of reintegrates it or desensitize it, as the name implies.
Yeah, like it seems like almost like a type of like exposure therapy, but with supplemented with like a little bit of calming, so it's almost like easier to digest kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting that when we kind of disrupts that memory, then our physiology changes, or physiological reaction at least changes. It's kind of like how people sometimes say that if you have a heartbreak, you can just go sleep it off, right? You go to sleep, and it is during sleep that especially during REM sleep, our brain process all the events, experience of the day, and so a lot of that painful experience can be digested in a way where you kind of absorb the good part, the lessons learned, but you kind of discard the harmful, the hurtful parts, or the wastes. And so this is maybe in some ways, as they theorize, that it's kind of imitating that REM state. Because during REM sleep, you have this rapid eye movement, right? And that left and right, and it's replaying of the experience, but reprocessing and integrating it. So this is kind of a way where you can do that while you're awake, and like you said, exposing yourself to that again, but taking out the severe reactions. So by the end of the therapy session, they will do a reassessment of your reaction when you think of that event again. So oftentimes, each session, your reaction lowers and lowers and lowers.
Yeah. And another one he talks about in the book is yoga. And I think this is similar to, like yoga or other practices that involve, I guess it's kind of almost like light exercise or like Tai Chi or Qigong, those kinds of things where it's like slower movements, but more controlled. And it seems to help build awareness of like spatial awareness or awareness to allow somebody to become a little more in tune with their body in space. And what was it, proprioception, something like that helps. And I think that this is similar to some mindfulness practices too. When sometimes people will do like body scans while they're doing like mindfulness or meditation, where it's just like you kind of go through and like mentally like kind of just feel and just be aware of the different parts of your body. Say maybe start from the top of your head and then how does that feel, and then go down slowly. And so I think that like yoga and some of these other like slower, light, like controlled movement exercises and practices can kind of do that, like help build awareness of that. And in the context of trauma, a lot of times with like more severe trauma, that's what people feel like they're disconnected with their body. And like say in cases, I think a lot of people have heard like dissociative episodes. Sometimes that will happen during trauma, where they feel just dissociated, or when they see themselves like out of the picture, like they can see their body like almost in like third person. And so so this is one of the things that he talked about.
Yeah, I think this is a helpful way. Like you said, some people, when people are in a state of high anxiety or traumatic reaction, oftentimes we're not even aware of what's happening to us. We don't know how we're breathing. We don't know how our body feels. And because we're just in that maybe the hyper-focused mode, or our mind just churning and just kind of just spiraling in itself, right? And then it's become totally disconnected to everything outside. So yoga, I think, has a couple of things that really help bring us back into our body, so to speak. And one is breathing, like this breath work that is integrated into yoga has impact on our autonomic nervous system, right? As well as just the rhythm that kind of brings us back to self-awareness. And the other one is obviously the movement, being able to perform these movements. These requires balance, requires awareness of our body, our muscles, and how we how we balance and so forth. So I think these couple of things, one is breath work, one is this the body awareness or proprioception, can be helpful, and these also tend to calm the nervous system. I think that's what I find to be very helpful. This breath work, I mean, there's a huge increase in popularity on breath work recently, and we're realizing how most of us just are living, even if you don't have this quote unquote severe trauma, we're living in such high anxiety. We're breathing shallow, and we're breathing through our mouth, and we are just not breathing right. So our oxygen utilization is low, our CO2 tolerance is low, and we are stimulating our sympathetic nervous system all the time. So regular practice of yoga, of course, that's with the proper breath work. It's not just like, people doing yoga as quickly as possible so they can get through the movements. I think that's kind of totally pointless. But it's really the breath work and spending time to be aware of your body. I think that's what's helpful. And also it is a strengthening of the prefrontal cortex as well, because that awareness requires just kind of calming the busy parts of our brain, but also engaging our PFC. So it is a mental exercise in a sense, saying focus on our breath, focus on my body, focus on how I feel, focusing on the details of the movement and so forth. So that's I think can be quite helpful in calming the anxious brain, bringing ourselves to the present and to the body.
And so I think this is I guess similar to with yoga, like you were talking about, the breath work is so important. And so I think this is some of like the technologies or devices that you can do to help with like breathing practices or training your HRV.
Breath work. We see it in a lot of different traditions, right? Eastern traditions, more so probably hear about it more, where they emphasize a lot on this slow breathing, this deep breathing. And deep breathing is not like you take a deep breath. That's like totally wrong, by the way. Deep breathing means in fact, you don't have a whole lot of movement in your chest or your shoulders, because as you breathe deeply, goes all the way deep down into the abdomen area. It's not so much you're breathing into your stomach, because we don't actually breathe into our stomach. We are moving air deeper into the lung, to the bottom of the lung. That's what deep breathing is, right? So when you breathe, especially when you breathe through the nose, air can travel more freely, and in fact goes down deeper into the bottom of your lung. And when we expand our abdominal cavity, it gives the lung more space to expand, so the air can travel deeper. And there also tend to be more blood on the bottom of the lung, and more red blood cell that can interact with the oxygens that you're breathing and carry the oxygen into to the other parts of your body. So that's deep breathing. But deep breathing and rhythmic breathing also regulates our autonomic nervous system. I think that's the key. So these devices that measures what they call heart rate variability are very helpful, because that's kind of like that one metric that give us a really good sense of the health of our autonomic nervous system. And as we talked about last time, when our nervous system is out of whack, then we kind of falls into this anxiety mode, this gas pedal mode, right? And we cannot shut off, cannot repair. So these kind of devices give us really good way to gauge how healthy we are. So in fact, every day I do these kind of measurements. I do it with the Aura Ring. I think you have one as well. So that would tell us how our heart rate variability, how healthy it is during our sleep, and that will indicate our nervous system health as well as sleep quality. I also use devices like this. This is a finger pulse oximeter device, but also measures heart rate variability. And also the one you see on the screen, EM Wave. That one is even better because that has visual feedback that tells you how your heart rate variability, what the number is, and how healthy it is. And what's interesting with this is that you can regulate, you can train your autonomic nervous system through breath work. Yeah, because when we breathe in, we are activating our sympathetic nervous system. When we breathe out, we are engaging our parasympathetic nervous system. So it's, in a way, you can almost picture like you're lifting weights. Like you push one way and you push the other way. And when your breathing is in sync with the activation and the lowering of your heart rate, and when you're in and out is corresponding with the rise and fall of your heart rate, then you are in fact breathing in sync. And that is the state where they call it a state of coherence, where your breathing in and breathing out is corresponding with the rising and falling of your heart rate. And they also find out when you are in that state of breathing coherence, your mind, your brainwave goes into these alpha states. So it's a state of calming. It's a state of relaxed, focused. So this is pretty amazing way to kind of hack your nervous system and train it. And yoga and Tai Chi, all that breath work is supposed to do that for you. But obviously there are other tools you can use as well. So this is something that I use a lot in my coaching practice, teaching people how to breathe in that coherent state, and I'll give them some tools to help them visualize it and get some feedback. There are apps you can use with a heart rate strap that you can put on your chest. But it's quite effective. It's part of my daily meditation practice. I just kind of put all these things together and use it at the same time. But you can do all these at the same time.
Yeah. So would you do say breath work every morning then with a device like this, or one of these devices?
Yeah, I would use. In fact, I can show you right now. So like the Aura device, not the Aura, the Fora pulse oximeter device. So it comes with the app, and it's connected via Bluetooth. Right, so it measures your pulse and blood oxygen. And once it's connected to the app, there's a breathing exercise that you can do. So you can use this to measure your 3 or 5 minute HRV. So you can, in the morning, just kind of let it take your heart rate variability health. But you can also use it as a biofeedback training device, right? So if you start, there's a breathing guy. So you inhale and you exhale and inhale. So it guides your breathing rhythm. And generally, we find that if you breathe about 5.5 breaths a minute, that is, you can train yourself into a state of coherence. And you can see on the bottom has an indication of your heart rate going up and down. I mean, obviously right now I'm not training, so it's very erratic. But if you actually breathe according to the breathing guide, you will see a very nice pattern up and down like this. Yeah. And so there are many of these kind of devices that you can use.
It's really helpful. You can use one of these HRV measuring devices or to practice if you want immediate feedback, or you can just do the breath work on your own. But I think it's pretty cool. Like I like this one like little fun fact I heard before, but basically, you know how when you inhale, it's like sympathetic nervous system activating, which is, you know, like fight or flight, and then exhalation is like a parasympathetic, which is like the rest and digest, like the calming one. So I've heard that, you know, I think even animals do this. Like, I don't know if you've watched, like if you have a dog and you've watched them kind of when they're trying to, sometimes they'll just do this periodically where they do like an inhale, like a double inhale, just like breathing in and then in all the way, like, and then like a very slow exhale, like, and then that is supposed to help, like, you know, like give a quick calming, like if you ever need a quick way to just chill out a little bit, if you're getting a little tense or in a tough situation, talking to somebody maybe who's a little bit irritating, you know, that could really help. But yeah, it's just like a quick way to hack it if you keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's actually quite effective, that long exhale. It can almost immediately activate your parasympathetic nervous system and shift you into a more calmer state.
Yeah. Okay. And this is the Fora device?
Yeah, that's the Fora device. Yeah. And then the left is the Elite HRV app, which is a free app. Now you will need to get a Bluetooth heart rate strap or one of their finger devices. These are similar finger pulse devices.
Okay, and another one of the tools that he talks about is neurofeedback, and so this is the thing that I did that really helped me get back. So neurofeedback. Do you want to talk a little bit about this? You're a neurofeedback practitioner.
Yeah, which this is kind of it's a bit difficult to explain sometimes because during the training, I mean, you just sit there and watch a screen, like you watch TV. You could even like watch YouTube and Netflix stuff, right? But then your brain is getting trained. So what's going on, right? Yeah. So so this is the name is it's called neurofeedback. So it is another one of those biofeedback modalities. And so what it does is that we use these electrodes to pick up your brain wave in the various regions that we want to train. Now there's no electricity going into your brain. It's not a stimulation device. So it only reads. So it's a non-invasive approach. So it reads the brain wave of areas we want to train. And it will take that signal, and the software will process that signal and use another way to show it back to your brain. And so it creates this feedback loop, right? So it reads your brain wave, process the signal, and show it back to you visually, tactily, and auditory. So you can see your brain wave being reflected back to you. You can hear it and you can feel it in this vibrating bear. Yeah, so because our brain is encased in our cranium, right? So there's no access to anything outside except through these input channels. So in this case, it's our eyes, our ears, and our skin when we feel the vibration. So
all of our senses.
Yeah. Our senses we take the signal that we read from your brain and show it back to your brain through your senses, creating that feedback loop. Now, our brain is always trying to make sense of any information that it's getting from the outside. So when we show the working of your brain right now, that information back to your brain will try to decode that and figure out what's happening, what it means. So the feedback allows the brain to see what how itself is working and decide how to adjust for the better. Yeah, so it's a non-invasive way of training your brain, so where your brain figure out its own state and it make its own adjustments. So we're not giving it we're not telling it what to do. We're not changing it chemically. We are basically giving just information back to it itself. And so some people think that it is, or some people see it as a mirror for the brain. Just like when we exercise, let's say we are lifting weights, but if we're just kind of working out ourselves, we could be having some sort of incorrect movement, but we're not aware of. But if we stand in front of the mirror, like in the gym, and see ourselves lifting and realize, oh, actually, I'm kind of off balance, or I'm really not engaging the bicep as I wanted to. In fact, I'm actually leveraging my body or something like that, right? Instead of purely working my bicep. So you can have that feedback information, and then automatically you make corrections. So in this case, we're encouraging the brain to fix itself, right? And instead of kind of giving it a crutch, so to speak, or giving it a Band-Aid. So that's the basics of neurofeedback.
Yeah, this one's really interesting. I think that it's definitely hard to explain. It definitely sounds really weird, but it seems to be working on like the body and the brain's own, almost like our intrinsic, like healing ability or capacity. And it's kind of like this. I think it kind of works on like with homeostasis, basically, like adjusting to the most optimal state. And so all of this is subconscious. Like going into it, I didn't know what neurofeedback was going to be, and I thought it was going to be like, I don't know, concentration games or something, but it really is. It's completely passive for the conscious brain. Like you're really not doing anything consciously. But it seems to work on a more subconscious level.
Yeah, and during the training process, I still do a lot of talk, or some people want some sort of counseling, or I would teach them, I coach them on how to improve their nutrition, for example, or I will teach them some meditative practices, or help them process some of their traumatic memory. In fact, because your conscious brain is not directly involved in this. It's all the signal that's coming in is really your subconscious mind that is processing it. So I can still engage in the conscious part of your brain and work on other things. It's quite interesting. So I would like several people recently, in fact, they all have pretty severe trauma that is causing their depressive state. So in fact, I just do some trauma processing exercises with them during neurofeedback while they're doing neurofeedback. And it's quite effective because then neurofeedback kind of calms their natural state already, and so they're in fact better able to process these traumatic experiences.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, well, I guess some more pictures of the neurofeedback.
Yeah, the earlier one is just kind of how the hookup is, and this particular one is a picture of different training approaches. In fact, neurofeedback the one we just kind of described as the subconscious processing, we can train different parts of your cortex, including your prefrontal cortex, so you can have better emotional regulation or better thought regulation or better behavioral regulation or even better focus for individuals with ADHD. But there are training modalities where you can go into this meditative state. So you have like the synchrony training where you are training for that specific frequency that we set. We know that in research, people in alpha state or people in these deep meditative states oftentimes are very strong alpha. Yeah, so you can train for alpha frequency, or you have people in these this kind of burst of creativity have these gamma states. So you can train for gamma states. So that they have also these deep state trauma processing, we call it alpha theta state. So you are in between alpha and theta, and it's kind of help you go into the state where you're almost like you're dreaming, and you are allowing the deeper kind of subconscious memories to surface. So where you can process that and. So there are a lot of different modalities as well with neurofeedback. It's quite flexible and can address a pretty wide range of brain-related challenges. All right, another approach that Dr. Vennekel talked about is related to group interaction, or he calls it like a communal rhythms and theater. And this is kind of interesting because this is more about how our brain can heal as we connect with other people. Not so much through just typical relational way, like we are friends, we feel the emotional support, but it's more through these, I guess, how I'm not even sure exactly how to describe it. It's more like falling in sync, falling in rhythm, or you're attuned to one another in these either rhythmically or in this even like in theater, you'll be this kind of playing off each other in words or in gestures, right? So reflecting each other's behavior, that kind of synchronization. Yeah. So, for example, I do worship team music, and if you are playing music together and your timing is in sync, it feels good. It feels like you just don't even need to think. It's almost like the alpha state that you're in, and you just go and you just flow. But if one person is off, timing wise, you just feel terrible. You feel like you're scared, right? You don't feel safe. It just feels like something is off, right? So this kind of rhythmic synchrony is quite powerful. And in fact, when we do church music, when we lead worship, if the whole band is playing in sync and when everything flows, you can feel the entire congregation, hundreds of people going in sync. But if somebody's off, you can also see immediately the congregation disconnects. So it's quite powerful. So when we shift into playing with a track, with a click track, with a metronome in our ear, or now we're playing with all these band tracks, and we're much more in sync, we immediately see a whole new level of engagement from the rest of the people, hundreds of people at a time. Right? And you see that kind of in theater as well. When people are improving and they are dynamically interacting with each other in synchrony, you also see that person is kind of going into another state of I don't know if it's just awareness or just a natural flow, right? Where they're not in anxious, kind of nervous state, but it's just very relaxed, very comfortable, yet at the same time, the brain is functioning, is moving quick, and it's so it's almost like that mirroring of each other allows us to be connected, and that changes our inner state.
Yeah, I think there's people have talked about these like group activities, or say like for worship, like singing together, things like that. I guess like choir could also be one of these things, but these group activities, or even like drum circles and stuff, as kind of like these similar group activities where like you can really get in sync, and it's almost like almost like a broadened awareness or experience and like perception of the world, where people are able to come a little bit like outside of themselves, or their awareness isn't just completely focused and narrowed in on like their immediate, like I guess their immediate activities.
Yeah, we don't have as much experience in terms of using it in therapy or something like that, but we kind of just through music, and we kind of, I mean, I think people enjoy that, right? Dancing together in large group, like line dancing, or even just around campfire, right? With people kind of dancing. You see different cultures where they have this drumming and dancing around campfire. Yeah, so makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And another thing that what we talked about, the thought was kind of helpful for processing is things like, this is Jordan Peterson's self-authoring program, and I think there's a lot of things like this where I think this is more mental and like thought oriented, and because it directly involves your personal narrative, but this also seems to be a huge important component, because in my own experience at least, I think that first I had to be able to accept myself, my situation, and guess how much it all sucked, and then neurofeedback was huge, along with a lot of other things, but neurofeedback really helped that like physiological calming component, where it was able to address my stressed out brain, and so that really helped with that kind of calming. But then after that, I think things like this really help. Say like, so for his self-authoring, some of his other I think he has like other programs or things to work through too. They're kind of similar in that they walk you through mapping out your story or your narrative, basically. And so I think I'm not sure if it's this one or if it's another one he has, but you go over different, like you write out your life story, and I think you separate them into like different time periods with different major events through your life, like emotionally significant events or events that shaped like who you are. And so you just map it all out. And it's a similar thing for like major positive experiences or negative experience. You just write it all out. And I think this is really helpful. And he has something else where you, I think you write out like different, like I think you do based off different areas or different topics. So different areas of your life. So I think they could be like your family or your relationships with friends, like a significant other, your work or school, your health. And you write about these different areas of your life. and you write about where you are right now and where your ideal would be, and then where you would be if, like, I think everything just like spiraled out of control, like the worst you can imagine. Say, like, if your unhealthy or your poor practices continued, where would you be in 10 years? And so that kind of gives you a clear picture of, where you want to be, and gives you a little bit almost like the carrot and the stick kind of thing, where it's like you have an incentive. You want to go over there for two reasons. You want to pursue something and you want to avoid something else. And I think all of that is really helpful in that, like, it's like journaling is helpful because I think that's a way to very clearly map out where you are or what you're dealing with. Because I guess I think we talked about this in the last episode about how oftentimes our stress reactions when we're afraid of something, it just keeps coming up or it lingers in the back of our mind, and we're just constantly stressed if we run into a problem or a poor interaction, some situation where things went south and we don't know what to do about it. And so it seems that our brain just holds on to that. It doesn't have so much of a memory for, or so much of a capacity to tell when something happened way far in the past versus right now. Yeah. It's just a stress that you carry with you, and your brain won't let it go unless you know what to do with it. And if you know what to do about it next time, say that same threat came up. And so I think that's why, like, our brains won't let us let go of something negative that's happened in the past. So I think it helps because, like, if you actually get yourself and, like, almost like force yourself to map this all out, or like say you can journal, it helps you in being able to first establish the awareness of it, to kind of lay out all the cards on the table and see, like, what are we dealing with? Yeah. And I think in that sense, this is really helpful. I think it's similar to journaling, but I think it's helpful in that it guides you in the, like, pinpointing specific things that are important. And I definitely think that this kind of thing is really underrated. Like, I guess you could say journaling is really underrated. Yeah. Because I think that one thing that I think I see so much of, like, I think it's just a human thing, but it's some level of denial. I think that we're like, obviously we're not trying to be in denial, but a lot of times it's just when there is a huge problem, sometimes we would just say, like, oh, it's just like that, or we don't know what to do about it. So you kind of just try to stay positive. And I think oftentimes when people, just try to stay positive about something, that's a way of, like, it's ignoring it, or the issue is still really not being dealt with. And it's tough because sometimes, like, maybe there isn't that much you can do, but I think it really helps to first map out everything that's happening. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think even though we talk a lot about this bottom-up process, the integration from top down is still necessary because they need to be aligned, right? So how our body feels and how we perceive the world and how we understand reality, they need to align. They need to be integrated, and then so it's just that a lot of times our bottom functioning, automatic functioning, is overtaken our capacity to think. So we're not able to process rationally. But once that's calmed down, we still need to integrate our self-knowledge or knowledge with reality, right? So I think tools like this self-authoring or use of language, if you can't really describe it, it's sometimes that you don't know how to reformulate it, right? So I find that, I oftentimes like to integrate these two approaches. So I will help somebody calm down first, help the brain settle down first, or process some of the old memories so that you don't have that strong emotional or physiological reaction first. Then we can take those memories apart and rewrite the story, reformulate the story, or digest the story so we can take lessons that we can learn from that and start changing our lives, right? So I think these kind of self-authoring or the life book approach, where you look at different aspects of your life, your relationship, your finances, your skills, your goals, your spirituality, I think all those are still important, so we have a clear picture of the world, reality, but also have a clear inner picture of who we are. Or as a Christian, I have a clear picture of the kind of person that God has made me to be uniquely, and the opportunities it's given us, including the experience in the past, so that I know how to move forward, right? So you can kind of rescript your life in that sense.
Yeah, like I think all of these things really are so underrated, because like being able to set goals or identify a goal and start to shoot for it is so important, because without clearly identifying an ideal, if you don't have a goal, then you're not going to shoot for anything, and then you're not going to get anywhere. And so I think that, like, first and foremost, that's what you got to do. Got to identify, I guess, where you're trying to go. And I think that, like, it is really underrated, because today it really is so easy to almost like self-medicate, like we talked about, like just kind of numbing yourself, or like just filling your head with, I don't know, Netflix shows, or like scrolling through social media. Because I think that today's world is a world of a lot of stressors, and so like it's difficult, but I think that this kind of stuff really helps, because I think it's a very necessary step to take, like after you deal with like after you're able to have that brain calming and everything, to be able to like start to try to go somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's understanding that we self-medicate, right? Because if you look at it like how our whole economy is almost run on people spending money on self-medication. Like, I'm not even literally talking about just the medication, but food. People use food to medicate themselves. All the entertainment is basically numbing or taking us away from reality, right? But that's understandable, because our mind is in such an anxious state. We need to kind of escape, get out of our mind. But if we can calm that part, we can re-regulate that part, then we can move forward, right? And then that's when we also need clarity in how to move forward. So that's when these kind of tools can now be integrated into your good or highly functional emotional and mental state.
I guess like you said, I think it is definitely really important to like be like, oh, easy on yourself kind of thing, or understand that like with the attention economy, it's really all of these, there's a lot of things that kind of work against us, and it's just set up in the world right now, like advertising, marketing, social media. A lot of these things are oriented to, like, I guess pretty much capitalize on like our vulnerabilities, I feel like. And I think our vulnerabilities are, like our attention is drawn to things that are kind of scary or stressful. And so we pay attention to a lot of the negative things on social media. That's attention grabbing. And that's, I guess it works for the system, but it's really, really harmful for us, because it's just difficult to tell. I think we're living in a really different world now, where we're aware of so many different people and so many different problems. It's like this extended like awareness. But I don't think that, us as humans are like physiologically or evolutionarily prepared for this. And so like I think we do live in a world where being constantly stressed and being presented with a lot of different problems that we really can't do much about. And say it's like not even only in social media. Like I would even say, for me, I see a lot of it in school, like in universities, a lot of the coursework in the arts or humanities, like in English class or like history class, all of our assignments and papers are oriented towards like what's a huge problem that you can write about and criticize. Say like like the environment and the huge amount of waste that we have, or pollution, or like politics and corruption, or like capitalism, all these different things. I think it's, I think it's just our world or human tendencies. There's a lot of negativity and a lot of problems that we're constantly being confronted with, or constantly just presented to us, things that we can't really do much about. And that's not to say that we should ignore it, but I think that, like, I think we all need a little bit of grace, because these things we really, I don't think we're equipped to deal with it, like just physiologically.
Yeah. So I think if we can be in a better place with our basic functioning, then in fact we will have greater capacity if we do need to address these things.
Yeah.
And then trauma, I think, is what oftentimes is holding us back from being able to move forward, because that's something that keeps triggering our physiological, emotional responses, overwhelming our system. And so, but we need to deal with that trauma from the bottom-up approach as well as top-down, once our physiology is able to be at a good functioning level.
So I definitely think that like this, it's really helpful, but for me, like you said, it was the physiological calming that really helped first. But I think that part of this narrative aspect of it, it is so important to like give yourself a little grace, or like go easy on yourself and understand that this, I think, there's a lot of things in this world that are kind of working against, I guess, our like biological nature, or like pretty much the equipment that we have. And so like it's really tough, but I think that like acceptance is good first, and then in my experience, like then diving into all of this mapping out of everything was really helpful.
So there are many programs that are similar to these. So you got like the Jordan Peterson's self-authoring. You have the Butcher couples. They have this program called Life Work. Masson Kip, I think, is another one that is also pretty popular. And he talks about trauma is really the underlying root that is holding us back. And so what we oftentimes see is just the outer layer, which is kind of like surface coping behavior. You say, oh, I have this addictive behavior or self-destructive behavior, but it's usually that's just the very outer layer, because underneath that we oftentimes give ourselves a story, a reason, a rationale, right, on why we do this. Like, oh, I always I'm always angry at the world because I've been wrong so many times, or the world is just unfair, and so my boss is always taking advantage of me. So of course I'm going to be angry, right? Or I'm gonna have this passive aggressive behavior at work. Right? That's kind of the story we oftentimes give ourselves to rationalize it. But underneath the story, usually he talks about is a strong emotion. Maybe you are. You feel hurt. You're afraid that you're going to be taken advantage of, and so this emotion is what ultimately produce a a necessity to rationalize and therefore act out in behavior. But underneath the emotions is usually some sort of trauma that is giving you that kind of nagging sense of how this world is not safe, right? Yeah, so he kind of gives you a way to dive through these many layers, the coping behavior, the story, the emotions behind it, and maybe your beliefs about the world, which is ultimately kind of brought up or formulated because of our traumatic experience. Yeah, so that's another way to reformulate that so that we're not bogged down by the trauma. And instead, we can see, okay, then how can I grow from this? People talked about post-traumatic growth, not just post-traumatic stress, right? Yeah, so I think that's probably pretty good. We talk a lot about different approaches. I mean, in any one of these are books and books that you can study and read. So that's to kind of give you an overview. But I think, to me, what the important thing is that we really need to look at all these things holistically, right? So we have to address our body, our physiology, right? Maybe that's through nutrition, through exercise, and we have to address our life habits, right? We have to, because these things impact our mind and our physiology. We have to address our spirituality, right? So relationships. So all these things impact one another. So hopefully we can stay healthy, so our brain function well, and that we can have good relationships, supportive relationships, and we have ways to allow our body and our nervous system to be in a high functioning, calm state, and then we have ways we can process our traumatic memory and reformulate our story, so to speak. Because all these things play into each other.
And I would say, like, definitely look into any of these things that, if any of them have stood out to you, even just for anxiety, like, no matter how small you feel like your problem may be, maybe you think that, like, oh, I don't have trauma, but any of these things, like, whether you want to call it trauma or just stress or anxiety, just because the entire world is just so stressed now, I still think any of these things could really help. And in being able to, like, calm yourself physiologically. I think, like, these are really good alternatives to just basic, say, like, medication or therapy. These are things that you could do on your own and just give you options.
Well, we hope that this quick, I was going to say quick sharing, but I don't think it's so quick. It's pretty long still. But I hope that this gives you a quick overview, I guess, of some of these things that we found helpful. I'm sure there are a lot more. But these are, I think, maybe a place where you can begin searching and looking, dive into. And we'll try to maybe put some of these links in the video description, and that you can dive into it more.
So thanks for listening.
Yeah.